Hello viewers, welcome again to today's lesson. This is the Solution Space, the platform where mathematics is made easy and simple for everyone to understand and enjoy. In this video, I want to treat a new topic with you, and that is SURD. S-U-R-D, SURD. As you can see from the board, I've written SURD on the board. SURD is one of the topics in SHS mathematics syllabus, and it's unfortunate that most students struggle with it a lot, and that is because most don't get a good foundation to the topic. Okay, so they find it very difficult. So in this video, I'm going to take my time and lay a very good foundation to the topic SURD. Okay, I'm not going to rush it. I'll take my time and we'll take it step by step, okay, so that you get a perfect understanding about the topic SURD. Okay, so it's just about you getting a good foundation to it, and you realize that SURD is actually one of the simplest topics in mathematics, and you are going to enjoy it. So do well to follow all the videos that I'm going to make on this topic. Okay, so do well and don't skip any of the videos. Follow it as I'm doing it step by step. Okay, so do well to watch all the videos so that you get a perfect understanding of it. So you can see I've written simplification of SURD on the board, so that is what we are going to learn in this video, simplification of SURD. So I have example 1 on the board. So before we go ahead and tackle the example that I have on the board, I'm going to do an explanation on what SURD is, then we'll proceed and handle the example that I have on the board. Okay, so now when we speak about SURD, okay, so in simple terms, SURD is when the square root of any given number does not give a whole number, and that is SURD. Okay, so let me repeat it one more time. When you have the square root of any number and it does not give a whole number, the result does not give a whole number, then that is SURD. Okay, so I hope the explanation is clear enough. Let me repeat it one more time. I said that we have what we call SURD when the square root of any given number, the result does not give a whole number. Okay, so when you take the square root of any number and the result does not give a whole number, then that is SURD. Okay, so an example is what I have on the board, the square root of 12. You know, the square root of 12 does not give a whole number, so it makes this one SURD. Okay, so having the square root of any number in which the result is not giving a whole number, then that is SURD. Okay, so you can talk of square root of 20. Square root of 20 is also a SURD because the square root of 20 does not give a whole number. Okay, so it makes it SURD. Okay, so when you have the square root of any given number which the result or the answer does not give a whole number, then it is SURD. Okay, so please hope the explanation is clear enough. So before we go ahead and handle the example 1 that I have on the board, there's something else that you need to know, okay, because we need that knowledge to be able to simplify SURD. Okay, so in this video, we are looking at simplification of SURD, as I've written the simplification of SURD. So we can simplify SURD, okay, and that is what I want to teach you in this video. But before we will be able to do that, there's something very important that you need to know, okay, and that is a perfect square. You need to know what a perfect square is, because without your knowledge on what a perfect square is, you cannot understand the simplification of SURD. You cannot handle it. Okay, so I have to teach you what a perfect square is, then we will apply that knowledge to solve questions under the simplification of SURD. Okay, so now when we talk about a perfect square, in simple terms, a perfect square simply means the result for squaring any integer. Okay, so again, the result for squaring any integer is what we refer to as a perfect square. Okay, please hope the understanding is clear enough. Okay, so having any integer, then you square it, the result is what we refer to as a perfect square. Okay, and I hope you know what an integer is. An integer is a negative or a positive whole number. Okay, so again, an integer is a negative or a positive whole number. So when you have the square of any integer, that result is what we call a perfect square. Okay, so when you square any integer, the result or the answer is what we refer to as a perfect square. Okay, so let me use some examples, okay, to explain it to you. So assuming I have 1, okay, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can continue, but let me end at 5. Okay, so now when I square the 1, okay, the result that I'll get is what is referred to as a perfect square. Okay, so 1 square means 1 is multiplying itself 2 times. So 1 times 1, that gives me 1. So this 1 is a perfect square. Okay, so now when I square the 2, these 2, when I square it, it gives me 4. Okay, so the 4 is a perfect square. Okay, so the 2 square gives me 4. As I said, the square of any integer, the result that you get is what is referred to as a perfect square. Okay, so the 2 square gives 4. Okay, 2 squared means 2 times 2. Okay, 2 is multiplying itself 2 times, and that gives 4. So this 4 is a perfect square. Okay, so in other words, when you multiply any 2 similar numbers, the result, it gives a perfect square. Okay, again, when you multiply any 2 similar numbers, that result is what we refer to as a perfect square. So look at this one. 1 times 1. 1 square means 1 times 1, and it gives 1. So this one is a perfect square. So a multiplication of 2 similar numbers, it gives a perfect square. Now 2 square means 2 times 2. So 2 similar numbers multiplying themselves. Okay, so 2 times 2 gives 4. Okay, so that 4 is a perfect square. Okay, so the result of multiplying any 2 similar numbers is what gives a perfect square. In other words, when you square any integer, the result or the answer is what is referred to as a perfect square. Okay, so let's go ahead. When I square this 3, it gives 9. Okay, so the 3 squared means 3 times 3. 3 is multiplying itself 2 times, and that gives 9. Again, please, 3 squared does not mean 3 times 2. Okay, students make those mistakes a lot. Okay, 3 squared doesn't mean 3 times 2. Okay, it means 3 is multiplying itself 2 times, and that is 3 times 3, and that gives 9. Okay, so this 9 is a perfect square because you have 2 similar numbers multiplying to give you the 9, which is the 3 times 3, because 3 squared means 3 times 3, and that gives the 9. Okay, now the 4, let me square the 4. The 4 squared means 4 times 4. You can see 2 similar numbers multiplying to give you a value. Okay, so 4 squared is 16. Okay, so this 16 is a perfect square. Okay, please hope the understanding is clear enough. Now, then let me square the 5 also. So 5 squared gives me 25. So this 25 is a perfect square. We can go on. We can do 6 squared. 6 squared gives me 36. So the 36 is a perfect square. You can do 7 squared, which gives me 49. So the 49 is a perfect square. You can also do 8 squared, which gives you 64. Okay, so the 64 is a perfect square. You can do 9 squared, which gives you 81. So the 81 is a perfect square. We can do 10 squared, which gives us 100. So the 100 is a perfect square. Okay, so the square of any integer, that result or the answer is what is referred to as a perfect square. Okay, in other words, 2 similar numbers multiplying to give you an answer or a value. Okay, so that value is what we call a perfect square. Okay, so now we said that the square of any integer, so it means that it can be a negative number or a positive number. Okay, so it's not only positive numbers. Okay, so when you square a negative number to the result that you get, it's a perfect square. Okay, because integers are positive and negative whole numbers. Okay, so it can be negative 1 square. Negative 1 square means negative 1 is multiplying itself 2 times. Negative 1 times negative 1. So when negative and negative multiplies, it becomes positive. So it gives me positive 1. Okay, so again, this 2 also, it can be negative 2 squared. and negative 2 square will give me positive 4. Okay, so the square of any integer. Okay, so integers are positive and negative whole numbers. Okay, so the square of any integer, that result or the answer is what is referred to as a perfect square. Okay, please hope you understand. So let me do the negative part of it. Okay, so let me use negative numbers to do it so that you get the explanation. So assuming I have negative 1 square, negative 1 square means negative 1 times negative 1, and that gives me positive 1. Okay, now let me do negative 2 square. Negative 2 square means negative 2 times negative 2, and that gives me positive 4. Okay, so positive 4. Okay, so let me do negative 3 square as well. Negative 3 square means negative 3 times negative 3. Okay, and that gives me positive 9. Okay, so this is a perfect square, this is a perfect square, this is a perfect square. So the square of any integer, the result is what we refer to as a perfect square. Okay, we are going to apply that knowledge to be able to simplify SURD. Okay, so that's why I'm stressing a lot on it. Please hope you understand it now. Okay, so you can go on. Okay, so it's plenty. So this is what you are supposed to know about a perfect square. Okay, so with that knowledge and understanding, we are going to handle the simplification of SURD. So we are going to handle the example 1 that I have on the board. You say we should simplify the square root of 12. Okay, so let me clean this from here and let's handle the first example. Okay, so we are asked to simplify the square root of 12. Okay, so square root of 12. So this is SURD. Okay, and we are asked to simplify it. Simplification of SURD, and I've explained what SURD is to you. Okay, so let me write my solution and let's do it together. So I have square root of 12. Okay, so now for you to be able to simplify SURD, okay, your knowledge on what a perfect square is very key. Okay, that's what I just taught you. So we are going to apply that knowledge. So now we have square root of 12. We are asked to simplify it. Actually, when you type this one on the calculator will give you a straight answer, but we are not going to use the calculator. We are going to solve it and get the same answer. Okay, so when you punch a square root of 12 on the calculator, it will give you an answer straight away, but we are going to solve it without using the calculator. Okay, so we are going to simplify this one. Okay, so we are going to apply the knowledge on a perfect square. Okay, we are going to apply it here. So now the 12, you look for two numbers which can multiply to give you the 12. Okay, so again, I'm showing you the process to simplify this one. Okay, so we are going to look for two numbers which can multiply to give back the 12 which we have here, and with that many numbers comes in mind. Okay, two numbers which can multiply to give you the 12. So let's write all those two possible numbers that can multiply to give us the 12 back. Let's write it on the board. Okay, then I'll do a further explanation. So we can think of 1 times 12. Okay, 1 times 12 gives 12. Okay, we can also think of 2 times 6. 2 times 6 gives 12. Hope you agree with me. So we are on the right track. Okay, so we can also think of 3 times 4. Okay, 3 times 4 also gives 12. Okay, so these are all the possible two numbers that can multiply to give us the 12. Okay, but the thing is that we are going to pick the one with a perfect square in it. Okay, so if it's not having a perfect square, we are not going to pick it. Okay, so we are only going to pick the one with a perfect square in it. Okay, so let's start with the first one. 1 times 12, it has a perfect square in it. So let's identify it. So this has a perfect square in it. The perfect square here in this one is the 1. Okay, 1 is a perfect square because 1 square gives 1. And 1 is a perfect square, so 1 times 1 is 1. So this one is a perfect square. Now let's come to the 2 times 6. Now the 2 times 6, the 2 is not a perfect square because you will not get the square of any integer or number that will give you 2. okay, you will not get that. So this 2 is not a perfect square. Now we come to the 6 also. The 6 also is not a perfect square because you will not have the square of any integer that will give you 6. So the 6 is not a perfect square. So it means we cannot use this one. Okay, let's check the last one, which is the 3 times 4. Okay, now the 3 times 4, it contains a perfect square because this 4 is a perfect square because 2 squared gives 4, okay, which is 2 times 2, that gives the 4. So this 4 is a perfect square. Okay, so we are supposed to choose between this first one and this one. Okay, now we are not going to take the first one, we are going to take this one. Okay, because now the reason why I'm not going to pick this one but instead of this is because now this one I have 1 times 12. Though 1 is a perfect square, I'm not going to pick it because we need a number in which we can simplify further, we can reduce further. When the square root sign affects it, we can simplify further. Okay, picking the 1 times 12 will leave you at the same place. Okay, it will make it difficult for you to simplify further. That's why I'm not picking the 1 times 12. Okay, so you pick any other number other than the one which has 1 in it. Okay, so you pick any other number which is a perfect square aside 1. Okay, so that is the simplest way to understand it. Okay, so in looking for 2 numbers which will multiply to give you the 12, okay, but it needs to contain a perfect square. Okay, you pick any one, okay, aside the one which has 1 as a perfect square in it. Okay, so I'm picking the 3 times 4, okay, because this 4, it has a perfect square in it. Okay, and the reason why I'm not picking this one is because I've explained that with this one, the 1 times 12, okay, the 1, we cannot reduce it again. Okay, it will be difficult for us to use that one. When we use the 3 times 4, the 4, when the square root affects it, we can reduce it. Okay, that's why we are picking the 3 times 4 instead of the 1 times the 12. Okay, so we'll pick this one, okay, and not this one. Okay, so we are going to pick this one. So please hope the explanation is clear enough. Okay, so in place of the 12, we are going to write 3 times 4 there. Okay, we are just going to repeat what is here. Okay, but when we reach the 12, we are going to replace it with 3 times 4. Okay, again, for you to simplify this one, okay, you need 2 numbers that can multiply to give you the 12. But in picking those 2 numbers, you need to have 1 number in it that gives a perfect square, which is a perfect square. Okay, so you need to get 1 number in it which is a perfect square. That is the condition. Okay, but you don't use 1. Okay, so you look for any other number which can multiply to give you back the said value that you are to simplify. Okay, but you don't use 1 as a perfect square and you use it to solve. Okay, you use any other perfect square. Okay, so I'll use 4 times the 3. Okay, please hope the explanation is clear enough. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to clean this one from here, then we'll go ahead. So my square root of 12 is going to be square root of, now the 12, I'll replace it with the 4 times 3 or 3 times 4 is the same thing. Whether I write 4 times 3 or 3 times 4, it's the same thing because multiplication is commutative. Okay, so I have 4 times 3. Please hope you agree with me up to this point. Okay, so now with this one we can go ahead and simplify further. So what happens here is that the square root affects everything in here. Okay, so this square root sign will affect the 4 and also affect the 3. Okay, so we can separate them. Okay, so the square root will affect the 4 and also affect the 3. So we will separate them. Okay, so I'll do square root of 4 times, because the multiplication is there, so we bring the multiplication. So times the square root of 3. Okay, please hope you understand to this point. Okay, because the square root affects everything in here. Okay, so the square root affects the 4, so square root of 4, you bring your times which is here, and the square root affects the 3 as well, so square root of 3. Okay, now the square root of 4 is 2. You know that square root of 4 is 2. So simplifying further, the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, so 2 times. Now we know we cannot get a whole number for square root of 3. Okay, so the square root of 3 will not get a whole number. So we just leave it. Okay, so you bring your square root of 3 like this. Okay, now we need to simplify further. We have 2 multiplying square root of 3. Okay, so 2 times root 3 we need to multiply, and this is how to do the multiplication. Now we are going to apply the knowledge that we've had on multiplication of algebraic expression. Okay, it's similar to it. We are going to apply that knowledge here. So now, for example, if I have 3 times, let's say 2s, now if I'm to simplify this one, it's going to be 6s. Okay, how did we get the 6s? This 3 multiplied the 2, which is the coefficient of the variable s. So 3 times the 2, it gives 6. Then we attach our variable s. Okay, so we are getting the 6s. So in the same way, consider this root 3. Okay, so consider this square root of 3 as the variable. Okay, so now this 2 multiplying the square root of 3, it will multiply the coefficients, just like this 3 multiplied the coefficient of the variable s. Then we got the 6s. In the same way, for 2 to multiply this root 3, I say consider this square root of 3 as the variable. So the coefficient here will be 1. If there's nothing there, the coefficient is 1. Hope you remember. For example, if I write only s on the board, the coefficient is 1 if there's no specified number there. So it means the coefficient here is 1. So the coefficient here also is 1. The root 3, its coefficient is 1. So these 2 will multiply that coefficient here, which is 1. So it's going to be 2 root 3. Okay, so just as when you have 2 times s, it gives you 2s, is the same thing, because this 2 multiplies the coefficient of the s, which is 1. So 2 times the 1, 2, then you bring your s, so 2s. So the same way, the coefficient of this root 3 is 1. So 2 times the 1 is 2. So 2 root 3. And this is our final answer for simplifying the set, which is root 12 on the board. Okay, so I hope you understood the explanation and you enjoyed the lesson as well. Please don't forget to like the video and also share the video as well. I'll see you again in another video whilst we solve more examples on this. Bye bye.